Hello boys and girls, today I'm going to show you how to draw this blue and white vase in the style of ancient Chinese pottery. The first thing we have to do is to create the shape of our vase. Parts of the vase are similar no matter what kind of vase you have, but sometimes you might vary the size or the shape of each of the individual parts. Most vases have something called a foot. That's the bottom part of the vase. This part, the biggest part, is called the body. Where it slopes upward, it's called the shoulders. Then sometimes there's a neck or a more narrow part of the vase. And finally, the open part is called the mouth. As you can see, it's similar to the body parts that you have. There's also handles, but you don't need to include handles. If you want to, I will show you how to do that. Now, what you're going to do first is fold your paper in half. You're going to fold it so the long sides meet. In origami, we call this the valley fold. Next, you're going to draw the different parts. I'll start at the bottom. I'm going to make it curved a little bit so that my pottery looks rounded, looks like it's coming out into space. So what you want to do is you want to start right at the corner and you want to curve your line. I'm actually going to switch to marker so that you can see. This, go up just a little bit, is the foot. Now we need to work on the body of our pottery. So that's going to be a big part here. You can make it lower on the paper or you can make it higher on the paper. It's up to you. I think I'll make mine higher on the paper. So I'm going to come up slowly and fill the entire page. I'm going to switch to pencil for this next part. So I want to erase and come back. Then this part that's sloping up is the shoulders. And then this part is the neck. And then we have the mouth, which is the opening at the top. I switched to pencil because I had mentioned that I'll show you how to do the handles. So I do want to add them on. Typically, they're at the top. So what I want to do is a curved line like this, and then another line right here. Now, it's very important that when we're cutting, we don't cut these lines right here because then we'll just cut our handles right off. So in case you can't see that, I did the top of my pottery or vase, which is the mouth. Then I did the neck. I added a handle, the shoulders, the body, and the foot of my pottery. I'm actually going to make this smaller, just like that. Okay, now we're going to be drawing on the inside so that you can't see my lines. I also want to point out that the outside edge of my pottery is the open side of my fold. The middle of my pottery is the fold, so that if I open it, you can imagine the rest of the pottery is here. Okay, you don't want two halves, you want one whole pottery, so the middle must be where the fold is. Next, you're going to cut out your pottery. When I cut, remember, it's easier to turn the scissors away from my body if I turn the paper as I'm cutting. See, if I turn the paper, it's a lot easier. Now there's one tricky part, the handle. You want to cut out the center of the handle without, make sure your fingers are clear, without ruining or bending your work too much. So, in order to do that, I am going to take my handle and I'm going to fold it just a little bit. Make sure my fingers are clear and just hold it together. Fold it just there. Make sure your fingers are clear. Just put a little snip in it. Now holding the two halves together, you can cut out the handle. Without having to cut it off and glue it back on. That's why I said the handle was a little tricky. A lot of times I do my pottery without any kind of handle. And let's see how it looks. And the shape of your pottery is complete. Now it's time to draw inside of the body of our pottery. Now, Chinese vases had many different motifs. That means they would put many different decorations in them. Sometimes they'd put dragons, sometimes they'd put birds, sometimes they'd put other mythological creatures or stories that they wanted to tell. We are going to draw flowers or plants in the center of our pottery. But before we do that, we're going to separate our pottery into different areas to add some of the pattern that you would have seen in ancient China on their pottery. So I'm going to draw some lines across. Typically, the patterns would be at the top and at the bottom of my pottery, with some central designs and images in the middle. Now, a pattern is something that repeats. So, I would like to show you some of the different repeating patterns that I've seen in Chinese art. One of them is to draw these curved lines that remind me of rainbows. So what I do is first I draw lines like this. Try to make them all the same size and the same shape, because that's what really makes it a pattern, when one object is repeated and it's the same size. Okay, and then I make them rainbows. And that would be one pattern. If you want to continue, you could even do another curved line on top. You could also do more simple patterns. You can do circles that repeat. You could build on this design by adding another circle around it, making each circle a ring. Notice how I draw each shape, I repeat the same shape on the other shapes next to it. I can then add to it even more. I can add some lines to my design. Remember, a pattern is a line or a shape or a color that repeats. Even something as simple as lines can be a pattern. For instance, as I separate the parts of the pottery that I'm going to decorate, I can use my marker to outline and to draw simple lines like this. By creating different types of shapes and lines and different patterns in my pottery, I create what's called variety in my artwork, and I make it more interesting for people to look at. Many times, Chinese potters would also have a pattern at the foot of their pottery. So you could put another design down at the bottom as well. Now in the center, in the body of our pottery, is where we're going to be drawing our flowers or our floral design. So I'll finish the patterns later, and I'll move on to the middle of my pottery. I'm going to make one central flower in the center. But you could draw many flowers. You could draw one flower that's growing from the middle and branching out. You can do whatever you want. But for this, I'm going to show you how to draw a flower if you were looking right at the center of it. The first thing I'm going to use is pencil. And I'm going to draw right on my fold a circle. This is going to be the center of my flower. Around this circle, I'm going to draw a larger circle so that it looks like a donut. Just like that. Now, at the top, I'm going to decide what I want my petal to look like. So I'm going to draw two diagonal lines, and then I'm going to draw maybe some little curved lines like that. Now every petal is going to have to look like this. So I could just draw it straight like this around. I could make my petal skinny, or I could make it wider. It's up to me as the artist. I'm going to go down to the bottom. I'm going to draw another petal, two diagonal lines, and then these three little scallop lines. Notice both of the petals start at the inside circle and just touch the outside circle. Now when I do this, I can continue. A lot of times I like to do the two sides next. So I draw two diagonal lines, and I'm continuing the same shape of my petal. It's a little bit wider, so I'll make this one a little wider to match. Then I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Repeat those in marker. In fact, I'm going to change this circle to have a scalloped line that looks like a flower in the center as well. And I'm going to do these 4 petals, carefully going over each of my pencil lines. Doesn't exactly look like a flower yet. I need to add more petals. So I'm just going to go around in the spaces that are left. I'm going to add those 3 little curved lines. I'm going to add some lines in the center of my flower to create some interest. And maybe I'll add some little circles, a little pattern in the middle to add some more texture to the center of my flower. Now, this one flower looks a little bit lonely and needs some designs around it. I could add little flowers, I could create some leaves for my flowers, or I could create some vines. The choice is up to you. Pottery is just about finished. You need to erase any of the pencil lines on your flowers. This is why it's important to always press so lightly with your pencil. And our final step is to add the different shades of blue into our pottery. So in order to do this, I'm going to use a paintbrush and a little bit of water to turn my marker into watercolor. Bigger shapes are going to need a bigger brush like this leaf. So now is an important part to decide what shades, what colors, what do you want to leave white, do you want to add to your Ming vase, or blue china vase it's called. A little bit of water, use very little water, and hold your paintbrush up like it's a ballerina on her tippy toes when you're painting. This gives you greater control and a different variety of line. You could do a fine line, or you could push down a little bit harder, and you could do a bigger line with your paintbrush. You can also do a little bit of shading like this if you just start at the edge and then wash your brush off and just use a little bit of water. You can kind of blend it into the white so that it goes from white to light blue to dark blue, just like that. I'll show you that again. A little bit at the edge, almost a dry brush. Then wash off my brush, get the excess water off. Just at the edge, blend it with the water. You'll notice that some of the shapes at the bottom I colored with the blue. So that's just a solid blue. And then you have different shades, lighter blues in here. Remember, it's very important to leave some of your vase white. Go over everything. You want to pick and choose what you want light and what you want dark. When you're happy with your pottery, don't forget to write your name on your work of art. You can either write it on this side, on the edge, on the bottom, or if you'd like, you can write it on the back. Have a wonderful day. I can't wait to see what you create.